Hey everybody, what's up? Big Jason. So, as you may or may not know, my good friend, my best friend, Scott Mongo Haynes, he recently passed away, and because his family asked me, I've been trying to continue his legacy the best way I know how. I've been interviewing some of his past friends and clients, and today I want to interview Carlos Duran, a fellow Gary Halbert protege. What's up, Carlos?
Big Jason, how you doing, brother?
Good, man. So, yeah, you're the famous Carlos. So, when me and Scott, throughout the years, when we, Gary Halbert stories and all that, I'd always hear about this Carlos. Carlos this, Carlos that. Yeah, this crazy guy named Carlos. And talking about Carlos in Miami. And then, I cleaned out his apartment for his family, and I found all kinds of correspondence between you two. So, before we break down this ad, which I think it's a great lead generation ad using live events, world news, which I think is great. Let's talk about Scott the man. How did you know him, and what you think of him as a copywriter, and share some of your experiences with him.
Well, even though I consider myself a world-class copywriter based on results, I would not consider myself good enough to quantify or to judge Scott. All I can tell you is this, that Gary Halbert told me, after me, the greatest copywriter alive that you will ever meet is Scott Mongo Haynes.
Wow.
And considering the company that Gary kept, that was a pretty bold statement. The thing is about Scott is that he was always there for me when like Caleb, Sam, and myself were like the last three proteges in the Halbert lineage before Gary left a hole in this world, and now Scott's gone, but Scott was always a friend. Savagely dedicated to the craft, savagely dedicated. I watched this guy consume the Gary Halbert letters time and again. I mean, every issue. Until his last days here, Scott was still building a swipe file. I've watched Scott write out, he basically, he took everything that we were taught to do by Gary and actually did it and kept doing it. Scott would read a book, or Scott would attend a seminar, or Scott would buy a series just for one nugget of information, and then he would turn that nugget and multiply it exponentially in his own marketing. Scott was someone that he was my older brother, basically, in the world of Halbert. He helped keep me sane when Gary would drive me crazy. He would motivate me. And I remember one time, just before I put out my first ad with Gary, my first full-page newspaper ad, Gary gave me, I think it was an 8-page letter to read. And he said, read this and call me, because I was leaving the house where we worked at his apartment. He said, when you get home, read this and call me when you're done. And it was a financial piece. And I read it, and I became instantly depressed. And I called Gary, and Gary says, so what do you think? I go, Gary, I feel really depressed. I feel really sad. And he started laughing like right away. He goes, yeah, I thought you would feel that way. He goes, why do you feel that way? I said, because I don't know that I'll ever be able to write this good. He goes, well, that's a letter that Scott wrote for a client. And if I can get him to write, I can get you to write, Gary told me.
Wow.
And when I came on board with Gary, Scott was in Oklahoma, and he came in a little bit after I officially started with Gary. He came back, and it was an amazing time for me. It was a golden time. I felt like I was living in some kind of fairy tale. I had this massive mentor in Gary Halbert. I had this larger than life older brother in Scott Haynes, and then there was this experience that I can't put into words. It's, if you've ever had a magical moment in your life, then you know what I'm talking about. It was a magical moment. We putz around Miami in what Gary would call the perfect color, Toyota and Rolls Royce and Cadillacs. And the perfect color, it's an off coral peach that most people would perceive as pink. Mm-hmm. I learned a lot about social engineering from Scott. But what I learned from Scott was to wake up every morning at about 4:30 and pull out an ad from my swipe file, and clean my eyes and brush my teeth, make my bed. That I learned from Gary, believe it or not. Just the importance of being organized before you get to work a little bit. Just having that moment of clarity where you clean up. Scott would clean his apartment. Gary would clean his apartment, and you take out that piece of swipe copy and you just start to write. And at about 6 o'clock, I would stop. I would eat something. I'd get dressed and I'd go meet Gary at the office and get to work. I also learned from Scott the importance of reading, just to continuously feed your mind with the information that you're most interested in, whatever you're working with. Scott never stopped reading. He gave me a lot of great book recommendations. And one of the most important things I think that Scott read continuously was the Gary Halbert letter. He would read issues that he could probably quote, or close to quote verbatim. And he would just continuously read them again and again and take notes. Scott was very big on just acquiring information, but not information for the sake of information. He would collect this information for the purpose of using it. So what makes you a world-class copywriter is, and Gary was teaching this before the book Blink Outliners came out. It's the 10,000 hour theory. If you practice something for 10,000 hours, the neurological patterns that are created in your brain and in your muscle memory bring you to a world-class level in that field. And certainly Scott had over 10,000 hours accumulated. Part of those 10,000 hours is writing copy, and good copy, proven copy, in your own handwriting. And so Scott would, and why am I emphasizing the same things over and over again? Is because this is really it. It's not, Gary would always say that a rookie or a rookie genius waits for inspiration, but a veteran works with a headache. And that's what it was about. It's about the basics, the swipe file, the index cards, the continual consumption of information, the constantly working to improve your craft, just continuously writing, and like John Carlton teaches, not self-editing. Mm-hmm. Scott was someone that brought that point home for me. Don't edit yourself in the middle of your copy. Just write something wild like bear trap vaginas, and see where it goes, see where it takes you. And that's what Scott gave me. And then there was something, so that's the professional side. Scott gave me a real hands-on experience with the fundamentals. And then I got to see these two really cool guys, like these misfits, how they created the world that, because Gary doesn't fit in to the 9-to-5 normal world. I mean, Gary's a guy that in front of me and Scott in Los Angeles, in some huge tower, I think in Century City or in LA we were at the time, Gary ripped up a $15,000 check and threw it back at the client and said, "I'm not interested," and said, "Scott, Carlos, let's go."
Wow.
And we got up and left. Yeah. Well, interesting side note, like 4 or 5 days later, they called Gary up and they offered him like 20 or 25,000 to do the job. And then of course we took it. But, but Scott was not, Scott didn't do things for the money. It wasn't like the money for the money's sake. And what I saw was just this really amazing way of living life. They lived life on their terms. They worked on their terms. They made money on their terms. And those were all the things that attracted me, like they turned me on. Like I was excited about this,
Right.
Like I remember one time at one of Gary's seminars in the Beverly Hills Hilton. It was the first time that I spoke, and it was just a small presentation on direct mail and finding list brokers. And John Carlton came up to me. He goes, "You got a chubby, didn't you?" I said, "Yeah," because it was just exciting to be around these guys. They and it wasn't all work. Gary brought me to Costa Rica. Scott taught me how to not to get. Scott usually rented a car. He would rent a car for like a month. He wouldn't buy it, but there was a lot of science to that. Because he didn't have to be locked into a lease. If he was going to travel somewhere, his car wasn't sitting in the garage. He didn't have to constantly pay a car insurance payment. He lived a different life, but it was his life, and that's the thing. He was able to create the grooves and the patterns that he needed to live life on his terms. And that to me is true bravado. That to me is true success. It is having the knowledge, the wisdom, and the will to create the life you want. And that's definitely something that I learned from Scott by living the example, by watching him do it. And then of course there was the health aspect. Although Scott wasn't physically a healthy person, he worked out a lot. And he had a discipline of going to the gym and working out. And it'd be funny because he'd go with his chew tobacco, and I'd go to him with the gym, and he'd have his spit cup and his chew tobacco. He'd get on the treadmill and be spitting, and then maybe pump some iron and spitting. And I miss him, man. I miss them both a lot, and I've got those gifts that they left me in my heart, and. Yeah, eternal gratitude with Scott Mongo Haynes for what he brought into my life.
Awesome, man. Thanks for sharing all this. So what would you say to someone who either wants to learn copywriting, wants to know what good copy looks like, or maybe wants to improve their existing copy skills, and knowing that Shortcut Copywriting Secrets version 2, his never before seen ads that no one's ever seen before, even some of his best friends, they're going to be released, and guys like Clayton Makepeace, John Carlton, David Deutsch, they're going to be breaking down over 21 of his ads. What would you say to someone who has a chance to get their hands on this?
Well, the first thing that I would say to someone that wanted to become a copywriter is go test yourself at a psychiatrist or a psychologist. Make sure that you're not clinically insane. I think poker and copywriting are two of the hardest ways to make easy money. But if you're really committed, if this is what you really want, I think Scott's system, the shortcut copywriting system, is the way to go. I wouldn't recommend. There's two writing courses that I would recommend: Scott's and John Carlton's. And those are the only two that I would recommend. And I would start with Scott because I know the way that he lays down the fundamentals. I understand the way that he brings out the information, and that's the way you want to receive it when you're first starting out. Because from there you can go on to something like John Carlton's course and not be a neophyte. You'll be grounded, well versed in the jargon, in the concepts, because marketing and copywriting are different but the same.
Right.
Because the marketing structure is the universe in which the copy operates.
Yep.
So you have to understand the marketing vehicle that you want to create from top to bottom, and then you have to imagine, who are you talking to? Who is the person? Because it's only one person, right? It's only one person that's reading your letter at a time. It's not 10 people huddled over each other reading the same letter, usually,
Right.
So this is what Scott does. He takes you into the mind of one person, one guy, one girl, and teaches you how to enter a conversation that's already going on in their mind. What do I mean by that? As Scott would tell you, when a person wants to buy something, when they want to buy a weight loss product, when they want to buy a financial product, when they want to buy a golf product, a martial arts product, they're thinking about something. They're thinking about healthier, better looking. They're thinking about making more money. They're thinking about playing better golf. They're thinking about self-defense and kicking ass. That's the conversation that's already taking place. All you have to know how to do, which Scott shows you in his course how to do, is how to inject yourself into that conversation almost like you're their best friend and you've always been there listening to them. And you just kind of pick up the dialogue where they're at. So if somebody was thinking about this, I'd say get Scott's course and do everything he tells you. If you're already writing copy and you want to improve your copy and you haven't taken Scott's course, my question is, what have you been doing? I mean, seriously, not to be an asshole, but like, what else would you have been doing to improve? You know, like like for me, meditation is really important in my life. So I meditate every day. You know, like, but what else? You know, but I don't just meditate. I read, masters of meditation courses and take, extrapolate what works for me. So if you're doing copy and you haven't, and listen, if you're making $1 million a year and you're good, you're good. But if you want to make 2 million or 3 million without that much more effort, you need Scott's course. Because there's things that in today's world of marketing, I've noticed are missing. If you haven't tapped into a Gary Halbert or a Clayton Makepeace or Dan Kennedy, you haven't really tapped in to the neurons of marketing and the sales message, the multiplied sales message. And so if you want to do it, get Scott's course. If you're doing it and you haven't gotten Scott's course, again, what are you doing? Get the course. And if you're somewhere in the middle, if you're looking for a career, listen, there's few other careers that are going to allow guys like us that barely finished high school, that probably got kicked out of college, that can't, we're not, what was the phrase that they used? We're not employable.
Right.
Gary would say that all the time, we're not employable. We're not going to go somewhere and get a job. The best that we could do is get a client and deliver for that client, and then in return deliver for ourselves and our family through the financial remuneration. So if you want to make money and you love writing, and there's things in this world that you're passionate about offering people, whether it's a service, a product, then get Scott's course, because that's going to help you do it that much quicker. I have a teacher, a spiritual teacher of mine that says we can plan to do something 3 days from now, 3 years from now, 5 years from now, and it's all good. But why not start now? Why plan to do it later when now is here and here is now? And like, this is it. This is all you got. Right. This one moment in time. So why put it off? Why not get Scott's course today? As you're listening to me talk right now, why aren't you contacting Jason and getting that course right now? Only you know the answer to that. But whatever answer it is, at the end of the day, you're putting off your own success. You're putting off your own entry to the upper echelons of life, where it's really good. And let me tell you, up here, like right now, I'm sitting at a resort in Costa Rica. A big part of why I'm here is Gary Halbert and Scott Haynes. Okay? And I work pretty much when I want. I don't take on copy clients. I have 3 clients with international services that I work for, and that's really it. But it's life on my terms. Could I make more money? Absolutely. Do I want to right now? No. I'm traveling with my wife. We're on this whole spiritual journey where we're traveling through different countries and studying and working with different types of plant medicines. But why am I living life on my own terms? How am I doing it? By the grace of God and by the knowledge and power that Gary Halbert and Scott Haynes instilled in me. So if you want to taste that cup, you got to get that course.
Awesome, man. And what about all these never before seen ads? Some of these ads are still being used today. His longest running client told me he still uses 3 or more of his ads that did millions before, but he transferred it online, barely changed anything. They're still working today. And John Angel, who writes for Agora, told me that he still studies Scott's ads today. He actually has a 5-year control in the hypnosis market based on one of Scott's ads. So what would you say to someone about getting their hands on Scott's ads?
But I'm very excited because even through you, I didn't know that Scott was hoarding, to use your words, Big J, hoarding all these ads. And I'm very excited to see what's coming out. You've shared a couple of them with me. They're phenomenal. I mean, just phenomenal pieces. I think in a little while, we're probably going to get into one of them. And look, if you can identify the source, the writer, and you can confirm the numbers on it, why wouldn't you want to see that ad? Why wouldn't you want to write that ad 5 or 6 times in your own handwriting? Why wouldn't you want to see how the sales psychology of that ad can apply to your clients or your market or your product or your business? I mean, why wouldn't you? Unless you have an aversion to success, then I understand. But other than that, it's like a must-have for any serious copywriter or marketer's file.
Man, I really appreciate you taking the time and honoring Scott's legacy like this.
That's my fallen brother, man. And no, Jason, thank you. Thank you for taking up the task of continuing Scott's legacy, of helping provide for future generations of copywriters, for helping provide for Scott's family. Brother, what you're doing, I assure you, you have no idea of the value nor the magnitude, but God does, and that will be repaid into your life.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that. I'll talk to you soon.
God bless. Peace.
Later. Hey, this is Big Jason. So, what's included with Shortcut Copywriting Secrets version 2 and how do you get it? All right. So, number 1, you're going to get Scott's original Shortcut Copywriting Secrets course. You're going to get his original Hottest Sales Letters, Volume 1. Plus, you're also going to get his missing magic order form. In Volume 1 of his Hottest Sales Letters, he mentioned an order form that he lost that worked like magic for a promotion he did for Gary Halbert. Well, I found it and you're going to get it. Plus, you're going to get the all-new Hottest Sales Letters Volume 2. This is over 200 pages of home runs, including 4 controls. 3 of the controls are still running today because his longest running client can't find anyone who can beat Scott still today. All right, so who's going to be breaking these ads down with me? Clayton Makepeace, John Carlton, David Deutsch, Adam Carroll, Colin Chung, David Garfinkel, Brian Kurtz, $1 Million Mike Morgan, Harlan Kilstein, Kevin Rogers, Sammy Markowitz, Caleb O'Dowd, Bon Halbert, and many more. All right, so how do you get your hands on Shortcut Copywriting Secrets version 2? Well, you go to shortcutcopywritingsecrets.com and get on the wait list because I'm going to be releasing this very soon. All right, and once you opt in, you're going to get a very special recording from a expensive Gary Halbert seminar. I found this in a promotion that Scott wrote for Gary. I was cleaning out his apartment here in Austin for his family, and it's a killer message from No Sex Gary, a real honest-to-God way to get rich with direct marketing, okay? So you're going to get that just for opting into the wait list, all right? And then on the thank you page in the welcome email, there's going to be a link for my private Facebook group for Shortcut Copywriting Secrets version 2. Join that because I'm going to be releasing some rare audios and interviews and some information that I found in Scott's stuff that's really cool that I'm not going to release anywhere else. So once again, this is Big Jason. Thank you so much for helping me continue Scott's legacy. I really appreciate it. It means a lot to me. Scott was my best friend. So go to shortcutcopywritingsecrets.com and I'll see you there.
Sure, actually. So I got into response in 2001 and stumbled upon this whole world of direct response, and I got really drawn to copywriting in particular. So I started studying Gary Halbert, the Gary Halbert letter, actually, old cassettes that I still... Yeah, sure, absolutely. So that's the copy right here. The Gary Halbert Masterpiece Collection is next to it. Kick-Ass Copywriting Secrets is next to it.